VAT basics. What is VAT? When do you have to register for it? And will it even affect your business? So VAT's a transactions-based tax and it's on products and services that we buy. It usually falls on the end consumer, which tends to be a member of the public. So as businesses that are VAT registered, we charge VAT on the goods and services we sell, but we can also reclaim VAT on the things that we buy, so the goods and services that we buy. We're not going to have to really worry about that if we mostly sell to other businesses. So if we're a B2B business, it won't really matter when we register for VAT, because ultimately that other business can reclaim the VAT that we are adding onto our products and services. Whereas if we sell to members of the public, so we're a B2C business, then registering for VAT will make our services or goods up to 20% more expensive. So that may make us a little bit less competitive. There's 4 different VAT rates that our products and services can be chargeable to. So most of us are going to be selling standard rated products and services. They are charged at 20% VAT. So we have our invoice and then we add 20% VAT onto that invoice. Then there is reduced rate items that are charged at 5%. We also have 0 rated items, obviously charged at 0, so the VAT on them is 0. And there's no effects on recovering that. Whereas exempt products, they are different to 0 rated products. These products also have no VAT chargeable on them when you sell them. However, it will affect the amount of VAT that you can reclaim on your purchases. And that's quite a complicated area. And if you're in that section, this video isn't for you. So I'm going to pretend for the purposes of the video, we're all selling standard rated products because it makes things a lot easier to follow. Another thing to note is not every purchase we make, we will be able to claim our VAT back on. There are certain things that we aren't able to claim the VAT on, but they are few and far between. I can go into it in another video if you want, but most items we will be able to reclaim. When do you have to register for VAT? Well, you need to register when your taxable turnover goes over £90,000 in a 12-month period. So remember, turnover is the amount of money that we receive for the goods and services that we sell before we take off any costs. Once your taxable turnover is over that £90,000, you have got 30 days to register. So you register for VAT by filling in an online form on the HMRC website. It's very simple, very easy, and you do not need an accountant's help. It's probably going to take you about 10 minutes. Once you have registered, they are going to accept your application and send you out a VAT number. And that VAT number is going to go on all your invoices that you send out from when your registration begins. In this example, say I went over my £90,000 of taxable turnover in November. Well, in December, I would need to register for VAT with HMRC. My VAT registration would become active on the 1st of January, so it's from that date that I need to put VAT on all my goods and services that I'm selling. And I can also reclaim VAT on all the goods and services that I'm buying. Another reason that you'll need to register for VAT is if you expect your taxable turnover to exceed £90,000 in the next 30 days. So say you raise a big invoice and you're going to go over that £90,000, then you're going to need to register. Very important that we do register on time, because if you have a late registration, then you are going to need to pay VAT on all the sales made since the date when you should have been registered. In my example, I should have been registered from the 1st of January. If I didn't realise until the middle of February that I needed to register, then all my sales that I'll have made in January will need to have VAT applied to them. So I will essentially lose 20% of all my invoices because I'll need to pay that over to HMRC in VAT, and I won't have charged that on to the end customer. You can also voluntarily register for VAT. So even if you haven't gone over your £90,000 of taxable turnover, you can choose to voluntarily register. For most people, it's not worth it, to be honest, but you might want to do it if you have a business that you need to spend a lot of money on to get started. So maybe you have to buy a lot of machinery that's very expensive, and obviously there'll be VAT on that machinery and you want to recover it, then you might want to register for VAT. However, people like me who have a service-based business and they don't need a lot of investment to get started, it would just be a big admin hassle that wouldn't be worth it. So let's have a look at an example of how VAT would actually work. So here, say I made sales in my VAT quarter of £10,000 and they had 20% VAT applied to them, so we have £2,000 of VAT on them invoices. And then I had expenses that were allowable for VAT purposes of £2,000 and they had £400 of VAT applied, then my end VAT bill would be my sales VAT less my purchases VAT. So I'd have a VAT bill of £1,600 that I'd need to pay over to HMRC. When you use that online form to register with HMRC for VAT, you can choose what scheme you want to use. So most of us just want to use the standard scheme. We've got a business that's going somewhere, it's growing, we just want to use the standard scheme. There are other schemes for very small businesses. Someone else can tell you about them. That's just not the type of thing I deal with. You can choose the periods for your VAT return. However, most businesses are going to have the following periods. So we're going to have January, February, March being our first VAT period. So that would be the 1st of January to the 31st of March. And it will be all our sales and all our expenses that we've incurred in that period that would go onto our VAT return. So the VAT return will be due 1 month and 7 days after the end of the VAT period, so after the 31st of March. So it'd be due on the 7th of May. And our VAT payment would also be due on the 7th of May. When you're using a software like Xero, it's not going to tell you when you exceed your £90,000 of taxable turnover, which is really annoying. And I wish it would, because then you'd have kind of a warning. So you've got to keep your eye on it. But for the purposes of actually submitting the VAT return, what happens is you import all your bookkeeping transactions, you apply the VAT on each transaction when you're inputting it, and Xero will essentially make your VAT return for you. It's within that 5-week period that you need to be checking that VAT return to make sure that it is correct for submission to HMRC. If you want a video where I show you how to do a few quick checks that will pull up any issues really fast, then let me know and I can do that for you.